When AYN released the Odin 2, it was pretty much received with unanimous praise and regarded as having incredible value for its price. When someone would ask for a suggestion about what to buy, you could really do no wrong with the Odin 2. However, the price verged on being very close to the Steam Deck, so for some it wasn't very clear why you'd want an Android handheld when you could go for something which was also received with unanimous praise that could play your PC games and even better emulation. As handhelds have gotten better and more varied over the years, it's become more and more obvious that you can't get the one handheld that is perfect for all situations. Size, weight, power, battery and more all come into the way we think about gaming in different situations. But some handhelds just have a chemistry to them where the moment you hold them and start playing around, you know you're in for something special. The Odin2 Portal has been this for me, and it's kind of wild to think about AYN's journey to this point. I started this channel because of the Odin Pro, and I wanted to show what the device was really capable of. Then their controversial PC handheld, the Loki, was a darker time for the company, even though eventually the product came out decent enough. And then they hit what would put their name out there as one of the best handheld companies with the Odin 2. At the time, it blew all expectations with its Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip with incredible power and long-lasting battery life. It really was a showstopper of a handheld. Most recently last year, they released a more compact version called the Odin 2 Mini, with obvious design influences from the PlayStation Vita and something a little more pocketable. It sounded like a real winner. And though a lot of people loved the device, not everyone was thrilled about the choice of a mini LED screen, as there were many who would have loved an upgraded Odin 2 with an OLED screen. Then, only a few months ago, out of nowhere, AYN announced the Odin 2 Portal. It's everything the Odin 2 has, with a 7-inch 120Hz OLED screen, and at face value, that seems to be the only main difference. But it's not, and the revisions made to the Portal make it not just an upgrade, but the definitive Odin 2 to have. Every aspect of this device has been redesigned, and I actually commend AYN for this, as it really shows they care about the engineering going into these and the user experience because of that. We are in a time now where both the software and hardware for handhelds is extremely good, and for me that makes the Odin 2 Portal the best Android handheld you can get, and in my opinion arguably the best handheld you can buy today. Before we get to the screen, let's go over the design. One of the things that impressed me so much were its dimensions. Compared to the Odin 2, it's only a little bit longer and somehow feels less bulky. When it was announced, there was an outcry that originally the device would have a reduced battery size, and when AYN listened, they said they could use the same battery as the Odin 2, but the device would unfortunately be a little thicker. It's kind of funny actually that they apologized for this, because as you can see, it still almost looks slimmer than the Odin 2. The other main difference is there's no longer a display out at the top of the device, and this time there is no fingerprint sensor for the power, and instead it's just a regular button. Some might find this surprising, but in my use I didn't think this was much of a loss. It just loses a convenience for if you want to lock your device and then want a quicker way to start it. The TF card slot has been moved to the bottom, and USB-C will be how you dock this device to a TV or other display at 4K 60. The shell now has a curved glass screen. It's very good looking, and although it does attract a lot of fingerprints, it's very easy to wipe, and I personally prefer this, as after using my Odin 2 for so long, I can tell the oils from my fingers and prolonged use have really smoothed out the plastic, and it doesn't look or feel the way it did when I purchased it. Ergonomically, I've seen several videos complain about comfort when used for a while, but honestly, I didn't have this problem. Maybe I've just gotten used to holding handhelds a certain way, but I didn't find it uncomfortable at all. And if you can imagine it being a problem, then AYN also sells a grip for the device, which is actually very good. The grip, by the way, is excellent. This is actually one of the first times I've ordered a grip where I fit it onto the device and immediately felt pretty satisfied at the comfort and grip of it. It doesn't fit the official case, unfortunately, but if you forced it a certain way, you could just about make it work. There is also this pouch that came with my grip, but based on accounts from Discord, it sounds like this might be a freebie that comes with buying the pro level or higher, so I cannot confirm the requirements to get this. I can confidently say I would use this grip, and it absolutely helps with games where you'll be using both sticks and triggers a lot. For the controls, every button has been redesigned, and nothing has been reused from the Odin 2. As the device is slightly larger, every button also has grown a little in size. Even the D-pad is just a little bigger than the original. The system buttons are now a rounder design. The face buttons feel great, and though some have said they're a little noisy, I didn't really find this to be much of an issue either. I think because it's a little bigger than most handhelds, I found it easier to press them more softly. The shoulder buttons are completely different too. They're definitely quieter than the Odin 2s and just feel higher quality. And I really like how they can be pressed down easily from any angle depending on how you hold it. The analog sticks have more range of movement, and when you open the box you find that the Portal comes with extra analog sticks that are a little bigger with more grip. Honestly, these went on straight away, and I think they are much better than the default sticks. I think these should have been on in the first place, but I'm really glad they made these and threw them in as an option. And lastly, the additional buttons on the back of the device have also been improved. They're a little larger and have a more responsive click to them as you push them in. As far as I could tell, the speakers are basically the same as the Odin 2s and are very high quality, though there is definitely a little EQ difference where the Odin 2 has a little more mid-range and the Portal instead has a bit more around the mid-highs. At max volume it was enough to hear a couple bits of distortion listening to my launcher's theme song, but with an EQ app you could easily tweak this to your liking a little more. The absolute highlight is the screen. And it really is a night and day difference with the Odin 2. Going back to the Odin 2, I almost couldn't believe I never noticed how much less responsive the screen was, and how much of a ghosting effect there was looking at menus and the like. With the Portal, you can crank up the refresh rate to 120 Hz, and it is so damn smooth. In person, it's a much bigger upgrade than you'd think, and unfortunately I can't show the difference between 60 and 120 Hz on YouTube, but a more technically in-depth review would do a better job at conveying why this matters so much. And then it's a larger screen at 7 inches, but it also has 0 bezels, and AYN have utilized the space extremely well, and is one of the reasons why the Portal doesn't really feel that much bigger than the Odin 2, and that's a very good thing. And lastly, with the screen being OLED, it's just gorgeous to look at, with games absolutely popping out the screen. I found I was most taken by it when I was testing out streaming for the PS5 on my PC and comparing the screen to the TV or monitor. There was a lot of discussion with the Retro Pocket 5 if having a good OLED screen was enough to justify purchasing alone, and for the Portal, having the option to go to 120 Hz is a very big deal. If you value these kinds of things, then in my opinion, the Portal is a no-brainer to get over the original Odin 2. And speaking of price, the base Portal is only $30 more than the base Odin 2, and for that you get so much more, it's actually ridiculous. It's not even worth discussing unless you must have an inch off the length of the already sizey device. In the past, I've always been an advocate for the base models of these devices, and I never really thought the higher tier models were worth the storage and RAM upgrades. But in this case with the Portal, you have 3 choices again, with the base at $329 with 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage, the Pro having 12GB of RAM and 512GB of storage, and the Max with 16GB of RAM and 1TB of internal storage. And I genuinely think the Pro is the best option to go here, as they're offering much bigger storage options compared to the Odin 2, and some people won't even need to invest in a large SD card to pair with it. And for some reason again, they've gated the additional color options beyond the base version, so at least with the Pro you can choose something other than black. I would have liked some more color options, but the white and indigo seem to be satisfying enough people. On top of this, AYN offer the option to add virtual RAM swap, increasing your RAM by a further 4GB, and you can do this on any of the models. The case is also very good quality, but is not similar to the Odin 2s. One reason I love the Odin 2s is that it's very flush and is designed to just fit the device, but I get why people would prefer a compartment for additional cables and the like. The Portal's case has gone back to that, and I really appreciate they made the top half a zip compartment so bits aren't flying around the place. There's an additional compartment in this flap, and the whole case has a very soft, cozy fabric. I think it's a great case, and for the Portal's size, I'm not that bothered it's a little thicker, but I think the problem for a lot of people would be the fact that the Portal's grip doesn't really fit in this with the device. So if you want to travel around with them together, you need to look for an option that is a little bigger. As usual with these devices, there's always so much to talk about. If you already know what the Odin 2 is, you know you're getting a powerhouse Android device that can emulate up to Switch and even some really awesome Windows emulation. And compared to devices like the Steam Deck, you'll be able to game even longer as the battery provides hours of playtime, even with higher end games. I also have to say the weight of this device is amazing. Like, I barely notice if it's heavier than the Odin 2 at all. You can definitely play this for long periods of time without feeling like the weight is an issue, and it's very nicely balanced out too by the length of this device. One of the other things I like to do because of the great screen and additional RAM and power is utilize high definition textures. I made a video about this with the Odin 2. I wanted to make some notes here for anybody that had issues using them, as I had some trouble getting them going this time. First of all, I usually use Z-Archiver to move files around because of the Android 13 permissions problem. In the past, I used to cut files and folders and then paste them into the directories I wanted, and for some reason this time I had to copy the files instead of cut them to make this work. I'm not sure why that is, but that's what happened to me. Also, in the case of PlayStation 2 HD textures, if you want to use the ones that are in DDS format, then you want to make sure that you're not using the 3668 version of Aether-SX2, or using that version to build Nether-SX2. I switched back to the 4248 version, and this one does support DDS format. If you didn't know, the 3668 version of Aether-SX2 has found to be a little more performant for some of the harder to run games, but this should not be an issue with the Portal 2's 8gen2 chip, and 4248 should be fine. One of the things that has been suggested a lot is that the Portal would make for an amazing streaming device, and while it's not something I usually use a handheld for, I have to agree that it's a great fit and something I've really been enjoying. I recently just got a new router with Wi-Fi 6 to help improve the signal around my home, and although the room I record in is not optimal for wireless, I've actually had a really great experience with streaming elsewhere. My favorite was streaming PS5 with PXPlay, as I was able to utilize HDR and there was nearly zero delay between my inputs and what was showing on my TV. It was just a very seamless experience and looked beautiful on the OLED screen, so I think I'm going to be diving into some PlayStation games I've neglected. Then there's an app called Artemis, which I think is a fork of Moonlight. By using Apollo on my PC in combination with Artemis, I can stream my PC to my handheld and even achieve 120Hz. I had some problems due to a multi-monitor setup, but I was impressed by the performance and can see myself using this more for particular games in the future. Then there's Gamepass. So as far as I can tell, Gamepass is a bit of a mess on Android, and your best option is to get an app called BetterXCloud from GitHub. You have to sideload it to your device, but this seemed to work very well for playing Gamepass on. I recently subscribed so I can check games out like Ninja Gaiden 2 Black and Indiana Jones. I've been told people have been getting great performance with this app, but I felt like I needed to play around with it more to get the most optimal experience for me. These are all great options for streaming, so if that's a huge interest to you, then the Portal is a really good companion for that. PC emulation with Winlator is something I've gotten more into lately, and it's a really good way of playing some fan games or indie games that weren't released anywhere else. You can play a ton of older Windows games, and you can even get some games around the PS3 360 era running fairly decently. It just adds so many more games to play in Android, and with this big gorgeous OLED screen, it's such a great fit for some of them. It's still an emulator that is in development, and despite some solid setup guides, it won't always make sense why some games don't launch, and some may need a bunch of tinkering to get going, but the ones that do work are very cool on the Portal. One of the cooler things you can do with the power and storage to do so is download high-definition texture packs for systems like the 3DS, PSP, GameCube, Wii, and PlayStation 2. They can add a lot of value to some of your favorite games and take advantage of the fact we can upscale games to 1080p and give them more clarity and punch. It's a bit of a fuss to get by the permissions issue in Android 13, but essentially you just get a third-party Explorer app like Z-Archiver and download the texture pack you want, which will be zipped. Open that zip up in Z-Archiver and copy the folder with the serial number of the game over to the textures directory of the emulator you want to apply the textures for. Then when you've told the emulator to load the textures, you can start enjoying some old classics looking better than you remember. In combination with the upscale, it gives the feeling you're playing a kind of modern remaster, and I think it's super cool to experience this kind of thing on a powerful, gorgeous looking handheld. Since the power of this device equals an Odin 2, there's already so much information online about the performance and isn't really worth going in depth with each game or emulator for the Portal. So, instead, let's check out a showcase of playing different games on the Portal and appreciate how good these look on here.
Aim for Orkney's flagship.
Here we go! Hey, Slippy, don't get cocky.
Slippy, you've already got bogeys on your tail.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Ouch! This happens because you're reckless. Be more careful.
Cornelia Army now commencing third volley of cannon fire. Andross's ships are being destroyed one after the other. You can't give up now.
Andross's fleet is dead ahead.
coming close. Ha! Here I come! Ah! Yeah! Tough shield! Give me back Joji!
They swapped out the hydraulic cutter for blade again. Use blade mode to damage its arms. Let's go.
So that has been the Odin2 Portal, a terrific way to start the year of handhelds in 2025. For me, this is an absolutely astonishing device and surpasses the original Odin 2. As a personal note, I've been playing the Retro Pocket 5 for the last 2 months, and I just don't see myself going back to it now. Even though it's a great device, and its size will be the reason why some people will absolutely prefer it over the Portal, the fact for me is the Portal just hits the notes I like even more, and that makes it worth the price. It feels absolutely premium, the size is great, 120Hz is stunning where it counts, and for my general use, it's just more comfortable and easier to game on. This is going to be an incredible year for handhelds, especially since the Switch 2 is set to launch this year, so there is plenty to look forward to. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.